This is wrestling on the edge of the world.
Kia ora and welcome to SPW Bleeding Edge, the podcast about Southern Pro Wrestling New Zealand, wrestling on the edge of the world. My name is Tyler King, joined as always by David Dunn. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing great, Tyler. Really excited for episode 3, just in the way that WrestleMania, the biggest and best WrestleMania at that point, episode 3 of our podcast. Going to be the best one yet.
We're going to exaggerate the number of listeners. 93,000 people. I am also very excited for this episode because we have JK Moody, the Antidote himself, joining us on the Bleeding Edge. We've not heard from him in a while here in SPW, so it was really cool to chat to him. We talked to him a few weeks ago, heard about everything he's been getting up to and not getting up to in the UK. So that will be coming up very shortly. But first, it is December. It is the end of the year. Finally, it's time to look back on the year that was, and we've got the 2020 SPW Slammy Award nominations to announce.
That's right, bit of a Bleeding Edge exclusive for everybody. So pay attention here and get ready to cast your votes. We've got 5 different categories this year, and we're going to start with the nominees for SPW Breakout Star of the Year. We're talking Cool Guy Sky, Jackson Cross, Rungy, Control, the Alpha Elite Charlie Roberts, and the Human Love Machine Big Daddy Rex.
Interesting options there, Big Daddy Rex. I suppose breakout star, it doesn't necessarily mean newcomer, right? But it means someone that's had an impressive year, that's really stood out and shined. So I think that's a good little list there. And then we've got SPW Guest Star of the Year, which even with the year we've had, we did manage to have a handful of guests on our show. So we've got the Lover Boy, Lockie Hendricks, Jack Bonza, TK Cooper, and Niwa are your 4 options for SPW Guest Star of the Year for 2020.
Very impressive to have 4 guests over the course of 2020. I think it's some great options there, so it'd be interesting to see who pulls ahead in the voting. And then, of course, we've talked about Breakout, we've talked about Guest, and the overall Star of the Year category, 6 big names here. The Shooter, Shane Sinclair. Willpower, the Human Hate Machine, T-Rex. Jamie, Tangata Esse. The Falcon Kid, Cam Kaiba. And the Hooligan, Marcus Cool. What a lineup there.
T-Rex in 2 categories. It's like he owns the place or something. And there have been some memorable moments this year. SPW Moment of the Year for 2020. The nominees are Cool Guy Sky farewells the barracks at Fight Nights. Kingy introduces his cousin Rungy. Jamie Tangata Esse wins the Southern Rumble match. Falcon Kid dives off the SPW entrance back at Fight for Gold. Professor Palmer aligning himself with Jackson Cross at Halloween Haunting. The Human Love Machine Big Daddy Rex appears for the first time at Queenstown WrestleFest. And Control set their sights on Jamie Tangata Esse and look to take over all of the SPW New Zealand championships.
Some very impressive moments, but of course the action between the ropes in the ring just as impressive. Our final category, SPW Match of the Year. Your nominees are Falcon Kid versus Liam Fury from the Southern Rumble Night 2. Jamie Tangata Esse versus Shane Sinclair from the Southern Rumble Night 2. Hooligan Marcus Cool versus Jack Bonza from Queenstown WrestleFest. Willpower versus Niwa at SPW Halloween Haunting. Also from Halloween Haunting, Charlie Roberts versus the Albino Rhino. And from SPW Fight Nights, Cool Guy Sky versus the Hooligan Marcus Cool.
Awesome list there. The Fight Nights match being in there just goes to show that you cannot sleep on the Fight Nights events, man. That tournament, that whole night at Fight Nights was amazing. And that match with Cool Guy Sky and Hooligan Marcus Cool, definitely worthy of being on that list. So that is your 5 categories for the SPW Slammy Awards. Keep an eye on the SPW social media. There will be a link posted where you can go and cast your votes. And we will be back on the next episode to talk about the winners.
And if you're listening to some of those nominees and you're thinking, I don't remember seeing that match, I don't remember seeing that moment, log yourself on to SPW On Demand because everything's there. So review it and really make sure you're as educated as you want to be before you cast those votes.
Great plug there, David. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for.
Let's make a call to the UK and let's talk to the former SPW New Zealand champion, former tag team champion, Fight for Gold briefcase holder, and 2-time Southern Rumble winner. He's done it all in SPW, and now he's on the Bleeding Edge. Please welcome the Antidote, JK Moody.
Drop it.
The Antidote is here. JK Moody, how are you doing, man? Great to hear your voice.
I am doing fantastically, thank you, Tyler. I'm having a delicious banana bread beer. It's not morning here; it's 9 o'clock in the evening. 8 o'clock, sorry, in the evening. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
What is the landscape in the UK at the moment? Are you in a lockdown at the moment?
Yeah, bro, completely locked down. We are in lockdown at the moment. We're starting tier 3 next Wednesday, which means we're essentially locked down but can go to the gym. So there's just going to be a bunch of like jacked, lonely dudes sitting at home by themselves still. So it's going to be pretty sick. Still nothing like New Zealand anyway. You guys have cracked it. You guys are absolutely killing it. I'm jealous.
Yeah, the timing on that UK journey of yours, I guess not how you would have liked, but
bro, it could not have gone any worse. It couldn't have been worse.
What part of the country are you based in at the moment, Josh? Where did you actually wind up settling down?
So we're just outside Birmingham. We're halfway between Birmingham and Wolverhampton in a little town called Well, it's not little. It's a town called Walsall. I live in an apartment building, and downstairs is one Chanel Star and one Kane Khan. So we still keep it pretty tight. But we are Birmingham, which is right in the middle of the UK. So it's pretty much 2 hours drive to everywhere, to London or to Newcastle or to Wales. So it's pretty ideal. It's pretty cool. Well, it would be, but
Yeah. Any other circumstances?
Yeah, initially it was sick. Now, not so much. But we move on.
So this year has been SPW's 5-year anniversary. There's been a lot of talk over the year about willpower being at that first event, but of course you were there as well. 5 years on, what are your memories of that very first SPW event?
They are very few and far between, Tyler, because I don't remember getting to the very first event. The first thing, because so there's a story here. So this is how me and Kane started wrestling. This is the illustrious into the start of this whole shebang. Is we'd started drinking in the morning at my flat at about 6 a.m. and we kept on kicking on. We had a wrestling themed dress up because there was wrestling in town that night. So the plan was always to get to the show at night time. But we'd all dressed up as wrestlers. So naturally I was dressed up as Jeff Hardy. And we started before breakfast. So you can imagine by the time, what was the show, like 7:30, something like that? By the time that rolled around, we were steamed, boys. We were well sauteed. But I remember not having that higher hopes. And then, bro, Big Daddy Niwa comes out and busts out a tope or something. I remember popping off my seat and I was like, this is sick. So naturally, I did what any really cool guy would do, and I showed Niwa a video of me doing a swanton off a ladder that I'd done earlier that day. It was the shittest swanton of all time, bro. And that was pretty much it, man. And then next thing you know, we were training and stuff.
Yeah. What was it like for you? You go through training, and then when it comes time for you to debut, you're doing it on one of the SPW main shows and following it up the next night with an event in Queenstown. Nowadays, obviously, trainees come through and they've got the Fight Nights events where they can sort of break in, ease their way onto the roster. But in 2016, your first appearance in front of a live audience, it's back to back in front of a massive Invercargill crowd, and then Queenstown, one of the most intense crowds we have for any SPW event.
I just remember standing there behind the curtain and thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? I'm going to walk out there wearing tights with no top on, and there's going to be a bunch of people I know just sitting there watching me. I was like, what am I doing with my life? I'm a grown man. And then we got out there, and as soon as I walked out the curtain, I was just like, oh, this is actually kind of sick. People seem kind of happy to see us. And the match went by pretty smoothly. It was pretty bare bones. We were getting led through. It was privileged Charlie Roberts and the uncrowned Prince Curtis Castlewood, who was a G, man. I like him. He was cool. So we wrestled them both nights. But here's the thing, David. Here's the thing. On the Saturday of the Queenstown show, in the morning, I had my rugby semi-final for the Galbraith Shield, which is quite a prestigious shield in Southern Rugby. So I'd been wanting to play in that game my whole life as well. So I played in the game. The game finished at 5. The show in Queenstown started at 7. So I run off the rugby field as soon as the final whistle goes, run off, miss all the beers and speeches and stuff. And I have wet wipes in the car, and I'm like washing myself down with them. And I'm getting changed out of my rugby gear into my wrestling gear while I'm getting driven to Queenstown, which is 2 hours away, so I can arrive at the venue and basically just run out and go in the ring. And it was an absolute shambles because I'd gotten into a little bit of a scrap in the rugby game, and I got socked in the eye. So I walked in there and I had this big, I had a black eye and it was like swelling up and stuff. And then I walked in and Charlie Roberts wouldn't talk to me because I was running late and it was my second show and I was already big dogging. I was already just showing up when I needed to. I turned up like 15 minutes before my match, but it still went fine. It was funny, man.
How did the rugby game go? Did you guys win?
Bro, we fucking lost. And I got punched in the eye. It was awful.
And then you lost the tag match as well.
And then we lost the tag match, man. I couldn't buy a win there. I had a horrible day. And then I ended up getting really sick. Like, straight afterwards, I went home because I got chopped for the first time and I thought he'd bruised my sternum, but it turned out I just had a chest infection. And I was in bed for a week afterwards. It was all downhill. I should have taken that as a sign, honestly, guys, that wrestling is not for you. This is not your racket. Get the hell out.
Well, thankfully, it wasn't all downhill from there. And you actually experienced a pretty fast transition, not just from tag to singles, but from mid-card tag matches to singles main events, wrestling for the SPW New Zealand Championship. It was the first time an SPW trainee had been put in that sort of position. Was that a lot of pressure?
Like, I'd like to act real cool for you guys and be like, nah, I just took in my stride, but I was bricking it beforehand, man. Like, I had Kane and Willpower giving me like a pep talk before I went out there. Because I'd only had an SPW, I think actually at all, I'd only had like 2 or 3 singles matches. My 4th match was like the main event, and it was against T-Rex, who was like, the god of SPW at that point in time. He was the final boss. And I didn't know if anyone would really care that I was going out there. Like, I was just a tag wrestler. I'd won the Rumble and stuff. That was sick. But no one had ever seen me do anything on my own. I was terrified, man. I was honestly horrified. I didn't know if I was doubting myself. I didn't know if I was good enough. The match went fine. It ended up being like way shorter than it was meant to be. For whatever reason, so me and Troy missed like the bulk of his section of the match. I'd like to say whatever reason. I think subconsciously I was sabotaging him. And so we went straight from like my fiery start. He got a couple of wee licks and an accidental powerbomb on me, and then we just went to the finish, and it was game over. And I was like, oh, sweet. That was easy. And then, yeah, it all went pretty cool after that, actually. Kane came out. We were under strict instructions from a certain director to face a certain way when I hit him with the belt, and it all went smoothly.
On that note, though, you've just mentioned you're new to singles matches as a whole. You've become the SPW champion. There's quite a lot going on for you, and now you're splitting off from Kane. Your days as a tag team are over. You're going to go into a rivalry with him. Obviously, on one hand, that's exciting because now you're getting to work with the guy who you came up through the training school with and everything. But when it was first suggested to you that, hey, you're going to become the SPW champion and it's going to involve splitting off from Kane, feuding with Kane, is that something that you wanted? Were you looking forward to that? Or was that something equally nerve-wracking and now you don't have this tag team to fall back on again?
I think, no, it was definitely something I was looking forward to. Me and Kane, we've always worked well together because we yin and yang each other. We both have, like, not just in wrestling, obviously, like he's the strong guy and I'm the other guy, but like in terms of how we look at things, they're very different. So like in particular instances, it's very good. Like if we're putting a match together, he'll look at things one way, I'll look at things another way, and we'll sort of meet halfway in the middle. But I always kind of wanted to know what would happen if I just went full tit this way. Like if I just went full bore, just put the pedal down and just saw what I could do by myself without having that sort of counterbalance. And he did the same. And I think it worked pretty well for the pair of us. But I was genuinely excited just to see what I could do by myself and just to see what creatively, what sort of things I could come up with. Like there was some hits, there was some misses, but it was just kind of nice just to explore that side of things, you know. And especially like going in with Kane, knowing that the program was always meant to be, I get it at the start, Kane gets it at the end, and that's the big payoff. It was nice knowing that that was where it was going, so I could be as despicable and just a horrible human to him as much as I want, knowing that he was going to get that nice payoff moment at the end. But well, obviously I didn't know when we started it was going to be at IRT Stadium in front of 2.5 million people, but I did. I knew it was going to be a big moment. I didn't know quite how big it was going to be, but it was cool to know that, especially like he's my best mate, that he was like going to get that big moment at the end, and we could help get it there. If we could make it the biggest thing that we could possibly try and make it, then it was going to be that much more at the end of it, you know.
And as you say, that story ended up leading to that huge match at the ILT Stadium. By that point, you and Kane both established as two of the top stars of SPW, only 2 years since the first appearance of the Deadly Sins. What was it like performing on such a huge stage and such a big spot on that card?
That was fire, man. Like, I think that was possibly the most nervous, except for the Ospreay match, and a couple matches I've had over here. I think that was the most nervous I've been before a show, because it was the first time, like, me and Kane had a main event together at a main SPW show at Fight for Gold, but I think we got a little bit too excited, and we tried to do a little bit too much. We tried to go a little bit above and beyond probably what we were capable of at the time. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. It was still a fun match, but taking what we learned from that one and then moving it to the Rumble match, and then we got to add in some toys. So we got to put in some tables and some ladders and some chairs and all that sort of carry on. And then you have the big crowd and the massive atmosphere. It just felt like if we were ever going to make that big moment happen, it was going to have to be there. So you didn't really want to blow that spot. You didn't want to blow what was essentially a year's work at that point in time at the final hurdle. So I was nervous, man. Well, I didn't really care about getting thrown off the ladder or whatever, because worst case scenario, what happens? You die. You don't worry about it. You don't remember that. So fucking who cares? But I didn't want to die and be like, yeah, I mean, he died, but the match was shit too. Like, imagine how bad that would suck. It'd be a horrible way to go.
That was an epic match, but that was not the end of your night at ILT Stadium. You were in the Southern Rumble match later that night, and I wanted to talk to you about this because I know what happened from my perspective, but I want to hear your perspective. So you're one of the last few in the ring at the Southern Rumble match. There's one entrant left to enter, number 20. You're one of the last ones in the ring. You're cleaning house, waiting for the final competitor, and the wait probably went on a little longer than it should have. Do you remember what was happening?
Bro, I forgot about that. So, because I already felt like a real dickhead, Tyler, because I went out there, because I had chair in hand, and the first person I worked with the chair exploded. So I was just waffling people with the frame of a chair, and I was going to town on people with it. And then I went to fire up Batista style and hit the top rope with the chair, and it bounced back and twacked me in the face. And I got laughed at by a stadium full of people. So I was already pissed, man. I was like, oh, this isn't going well. I've blown my spot. And then I turn around, and I'm waiting for the next competitor because I'm supposed to feed up the hammer. And he's supposed to come and spear me out of my boots, spear the chair out of the ring, so that got rid of that. And then he didn't come. And then he just keeps not coming. I'm just waiting for Iron Man to hit, and I'm just like, where is it, guys? And then, bro, am I remembering this wrong, or did the computer screen, like the Windows screen, come up? And then
No, it definitely did.
It kind of turned off. And at this point, I looked up at the screen and I was like, something's not right here. I thought either Hammer's made a run for it and they're trying to signal, give me a signal to just carry on, or something's gone wrong. But I knew I had to buy time. So Charlie Roberts, bless him, turns me around because he's good. He is good at Charlie Roberts. He's been around the block. He turns me around and we start back and forthing. And then I thought I'd see the screen light up, so I just kick him as hard as I could, square in the dick. And then just turn around to feed for Hammer again. And finally the music hits. And I was like, yes. But of course all the adrenaline and shit had gone, so that spear hurt like hell, man. I was gone. Oh, damn, I forgot about that until now.
Yeah, so I had set up the playlist for that Rumble, and then I was actually on ringside camera for that. Yeah, it gets to like 2 minutes or whatever you've been in the ring. And I'm like, I think it should be time for Hammer's music to hit now. I think I saw something happen on the screen, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So I run over to the production desk. I find out what's happening, and to control it, we had to like I don't remember exactly what happened. I think we had to unplug the screen briefly, and that put it back to the Windows desktop of the person's computer that we were using, which I think was like a space background, which the whole arena of people could see and laugh at as we dragged VLC player back onto the Titantron, if you like, to get it back. And I think there was a big pop when the countdown hit and everyone realized that it was working again.
Bro, Hammer would have felt like a superstar with that pop coming up, man. Little did he know. Little did he know. Do you not feel like how he was reacting to it backstage?
No, I'd love to get his side of the story. Probably just thinking, is this countdown ever going to hit? Or
Knowing him, he was cool as a cucumber about it. He just didn't give a shit.
So, talk us through working with Will Ospreay. Obviously, we'd had Will Ospreay appear in SPW, the year prior. He'd run a seminar or two. But come 2018, we get SPW Fight Nights, Ospreay as the reigning IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. Only a few days really removed from wrestling at the Tokyo Dome. And now here he is in little old Invercargill at the Barracks, taking on JK Moody on an event that's essentially been put together entirely so we can get this match made. I guess give us your reaction maybe to finding out that you're going to be wrestling Will one-on-one, and just walk us through your thoughts when this first got pitched to you.
Oh, okay. That was so. This is pretty much like it still is. I think the biggest match that I ever had was against Will Ospreay, because there's no one else like him. Like he has always been super cool to us at SPW, and I remember meeting him at the first Rumble, and I got to do like a little spot with him because he was on the final four with me, Kane, and TK, and I was like, oh, that's so sick! I got kicked in the face by Will Ospreay. That's so fire. And then he ended up being like a bigger star by the time he came around for Fight Night. I'd heard from, must have been Mark, that he was coming back over with B. And then they were talking about doing a Fight Night. I just remember getting a voice message saying, right, so the match is going to be, Josh against Ospreay. And I lost it, man. Well, I was so excited, man. I felt like I'd won lottery because, like, for a whole bunch of different reasons. Like, obviously, you want to see if you can hang with someone of his stature and his caliber and his raw athleticism. I wanted to see if I could keep up with him, And then there was also like okay, so if I can have a cool match against him, then this might open doors up for me, in other places in Australia or in England or wherever, if I can have a really sick match. It does crack me up that it happened in a shed. Like, it wasn't like Tokyo Dome, but it was fire. Like, it was cool.
Yeah, man.
It was just a cool feeling, a cool venue, it was a cool energy. But actually, like, finding out that it was going to happen, it took me a couple of days for it to sink in. And of course, with it being wrestling, I'm like, right, so how is this not going to happen? I was thinking to myself, so at what point does it become a 6-man scramble? Or at what point do I get attacked backstage before it happens and, someone else comes out and wrestles them? But no, lo and behold, came through, and I really, really enjoyed that match. Except for getting knocked out, that kind of stuff. But, the rest of it was great.
Yeah, not a great start when you're in there. But man, you would never know from how the rest of the match went.
Bro, I certainly knew it at the time, man. I thought it was pretty hard, I played a bit of footy. I was a bit bigger than him. I was like, oh, what's the worst that can happen? So I slapped the shit out of him. And then he backed me up and he gave me one back. And all I remember is everything went black and white. And, like, the sound just went from my ears. And I was, like, laying on the ground. And I just remember looking up. And I was like, who's this dude standing over me with no top on? Like, what's going on here? And then I, like, looked up and I was like, and who are these people looking out at the crowd? And I was like, I don't know what they're doing here either. And then for some reason, I remember distinctly I saw the ropes, and I was like, I put all the pieces together. It was like I'd solve the Da Vinci Code, and it was man with no shirt, crowd, ropes. I was like, I'm in a wrestling match. So I like go to triumphantly stand back up on my feet, and he just drop kicks me straight in the dome piece. And I'm glad he did, because I powdered out afterwards, and then I was able to like get my wits back together. He luckily he's so good that he realized what was going on. Basically kicked me out of the ring, then did his handspring backflip superhero posting, and gave me enough time to get back in there and remember who I was and where I was and what I was doing. So he's just a pro, man. He's just great.
And another big night was the 2019 Southern Rumble at ILT Stadium. And you ended up winning that Southern Rumble. But because of the timeline of your imminent departure to the UK, that meant that the title shot you got from winning the Rumble had to happen in Melbourne, where you wrestled Slex. Was it surreal to see SPW expanding into Melbourne like that, an SPW championship match at Thornbury Theatre?
It was that actually was massive, man, because I think that was my fourth match in MCW. There was two things that happened on my very first show in FCW that I was like, SPW is deceptively big. Like, it was bigger than I knew it was. Because I got over there, and a few of the boys in the backstage, I remember talking to Lockie Hendricks, and he'd seen my match against Ospreay, and a couple of the other boys had seen some of their matches from SPW, and I was like, oh, I didn't know anyone outside of New Zealand really watched it, and they were all watching it, and they were all really enjoying it. And then my name flashed up on the screen when I went to make my entrance, and there was I'm not going to say the roof blew off. It wasn't like CM Punk in Chicago or anything like that, but there was a polite recognition that there was someone coming in and they'd heard of them before. So that was probably the first time that I realized that SPW did have an overseas market and that people knew who we were. But then fast forward that 4 shows later, and it was the SPW bout in the main event of their marquee show. Like, granted, it was the MCW bout as well, but it was the SPW bout in the main event of their marquee show. It was MCW's top guy against, an SPW champion. It was like the two worlds meeting, and we were both, like, every SPW person I feel that's been over to Melbourne has been shown an immense amount of respect, and that is a direct reflection of how SPW is perceived. So for me, it was huge. Honestly, the match was great. Slex is awesome. He's really, really good. I was so stoked when he got signed to Ring of Honor, because he should have been signed somewhere long time ago. He's good. He's just real good, and a real good dude, and just a G, just a straight up G. I don't know if he'd like being called a G, but he is a G. But seeing SPW represented as strongly as it has been over in Melbourne and in other places as well, in PWA when Mark goes over there, up in IPW in Auckland, and believe it or not, I was at a DVD store, a wrestling DVD store over here, and I found SPW Wrestling on the Edge of the World for sale over there. So I brought it for £4. My girlfriend actually found it, and she took it up to the guy behind the counter, and she's like, see that guy in the mask? And I was wearing a mask because COVID and that. And then she pointed at me, and he's like, oh, crazy. And then he just got on with his day. I was expecting him to stand up and clap or something.
So at the time that you debuted for SPW, the Deadly Sins, immensely popular as a tag team, but there were no tag team championships to speak of. And then by the time SPW eventually does introduce a tag team championship, you're the SPW New Zealand champion, and the Deadly Sins have split, and you're in the middle of this feud with Kane. So when you debuted, were you disappointed that there was no tag team championship? There was nothing really for you to aim for as a team. And then how did you feel about the introduction of these titles when the Deadly Sins, at least at that point in time, long finished?
So when we started, I wasn't too sad about there being a lack of a lack of tag team titles or anything like that, because I just started, the fact that I was getting to step into a wrestling ring was super sick. So anything beyond that was kind of a cherry on top. But it was sort of the last box to check. Having won the bout, won the heavyweight title, won Southern Rumble, and won the fight for gold was sort of the last thing to do in SPW. So it just made sense for me and Kane to sort of go after that when the time was right and when we were finished with our stuff. And we were just lucky enough that we had Detention, who were two of the guys we'd helped train, which was a very proud moment for us. We got to wrestle them in a main event. And also Professor Palmer in there as well, who was getting some very good heat. He made it very easy for us to tell a story that we wanted to tell. So I don't think the timing could have been better for that.
Talk us through the decision from you and Kane and Chanel to move over to the UK. Was it a tough decision to make?
It was, man. It really was. I'd always known that I wanted to travel. Even before I was wrestling, I knew that Invercargill, as beautiful a place as it is, wasn't the be all and end all. And I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of the big wide world before, any serious real life stuff happened. And then when wrestling came along, it gave me that sort of opportunity to go out there and do it and have a purpose about going out and seeing. Like I'd never been to most of the places in New Zealand that I went to for wrestling before I started wrestling because I never had a reason to. And same with Australia. I've been to Melbourne previously, but I'd never been to Adelaide, and it was a nice driving force. So the two sort of melded together nicely for us to end up coming to the UK. And it was when Progress came over. Kane had his match for the Progress title, and I got talking to them, and it seemed so doable. We knew quite a few people over here. It seemed like it was an achievable goal. Of course, Mark being from England, he was able to point us in the right direction. We had other people over here, so it was nice. We sort of had a safety net, so it was kind of the easiest way for us to go. And the scene being as hot as it was before Corona, it just seemed like all the arrows were pointing towards the UK. We just had to follow them there. It's been an interesting experience. And then boom, March, the world shuts down. I'm super happy that I did come here with Kane and Chantal, because without them it would have just been an absolutely nightmarish experience. Like, they've gone above and beyond for me so many times since I've been here. So I couldn't have picked two better partners in crime to come over here with than those two.
Yeah, we did talk a bit earlier about the current situation in the UK, but you did get a wee bit of time to explore the scene, and you and Kane actually won some tag team gold over there. So tell us about the first few months you had wrestling in the UK.
Bro, it was great. Honestly, it really was great. It wasn't exactly what we thought it was going to be. Like, we'd heard tales of like the UK scene being as hot as it was, that you could wrestle like 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and it wasn't that, and it certainly wasn't easy initially. Like, for the first month or two, just trying to get our name out, trying to get on shows. I'm still, even though it hasn't gone as well as we wanted it to on the whole, I'm still incredibly proud of the first 6 months that we put in over here. The day after we flew in to the UK, we were wrestling. Flew in on the 6th, we had a match on the 7th, and I was asleep before. I was asleep until 5 minutes before my match, and then someone came in and woke me up, bless them, just before my music started playing, and I just like put on my ring jacket and just walked out there and just tried my best to remember what was happening in our match. But the first few months we got over here, we sort of found a home away from home in Kamikaze Pro, which has been sort of our home base. They've been the one that have really given us a chance to shine while we've been over here. We were the number 1 contenders for their tag bouts just before lockdown, and they've put us on a lot of different shows as tags and singles and that sort of stuff. So they've given us a chance to sort of flex our creative sort of muscles. Probably one of the coolest weekends that we had on the Friday. So this is a whole story unto itself. But on the Friday, we wrestled at Blackpool Tower Circus, which is quite a famous wrestling venue. Like William Regal quite often references it. So me and Kane wrestled on the Friday, and on the Sunday, I woke up hungover. I was very, very sick, boys. I was one ill man. I can't stress that enough. And I got a phone call from Ben, the promoter at Southside, and he's like, "What are you doing today?" And I was sitting there in my undies watching rugby, eating cereal, and I was like, "Probably not a lot, Ben." And he said, "Well, he had another team lined up to face the Rascals for the bouts." He's like, "So they can't make it. So I was wondering if you and Kane," and bear in mind, Kane was at work at this point in time. He'd dragged his hungover ass out and then gone down to Sainsbury's, who was doing like promotional work. And he's like, "If you and Kane could get here I'd really appreciate it. And you'd be facing the Rascals, and so my ears perked up because the Rascals, one of the best tag teams in the world. And he's like, and you'd be facing them in the main event. I was like, okay. And he's like, for the tag team titles. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, and you'll be winning them. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I think we'll do that. Thank you, Ben. So me and Chantal put our heads together. We formulated a plan to get to where Kane's work was. I'd packed his wrestling bag. Me and Chantal were just chucking all the stuff into his wrestling bag. I'd packed my wrestling bag. Quickly had like a shower, took some Panadol because my head was killing me. We get to Kane's work. Chantal puts on Kane's work uniform. She takes over his shift for him, and then a van pulls up and picks us up from Sainsbury's. And bro, in the front seat of this van was the biggest, most pissed off looking dude you've ever seen in your entire life. And I was like, man, what's his problem? And he steps out of the van, and it was Moose from Impact. So it turns out they'd driven halfway to London for this show. And then they got a phone call that they had to turn around and come back and pick up me and Kane from Birmingham. So it was like an hour and a half back the other way. And then we had to drive like another 3 hours down to London. And Moose was fuming, bro. He was so upset. And it's so scary having a man that size mad at you when you're first meeting him. So naturally, me and Kane did what we did best, and we just annoyed the shit out of him for the rest of the drive, just asking the most inane questions you've ever heard. But he was a genuinely cool dude, man. So yeah, started the day off with a hangover and ended them in Macca's with the Southside tag bouts and the Rascals. So that was cool. It was a cool day.
That's awesome to hear, man. Any other cool UK stories while we're all here?
Bro, I could go on for hours, man. I mean, a couple weeks after that, we went back to Southside for their last show. Oh man, this one sucks. But so we went there for their last show. It was their final show. They've been running for like 10 years or 15 years or something. And we were their tag champs. And we were in a 4-team elimination because Southside had been brought by RevPro. So they were getting absorbed into RevPro, which is really cool because we love RevPro. They're an amazing company. They're world renowned. They put on amazing matches. And we're like, that's sick. So we find out that me and Kane are keeping the belts, and we'd go on the week after this particular show to face Mike Bailey and Mal from DDT in the main event of RevPro for the tag belts. So that was really cool. We were buzzing about that, but we had to get through this night first. And before we walk out, they play this like Southside tribute video where it was like all the best shit that's happened in this company that's had some really cool stuff happen. And it went for like 15 minutes. And bro, by the time it's done, the crowd's like a weird mixture of exhausted and nostalgic. And then these two dudes walk out that they've never seen before in their entire life with the tag belts. And honestly, I remember Kane and me hit the pose on the ramp, and I like crouched down and I whispered in his ear, I was like, they have no idea who we are. And so we walk around, and it was like this place was packed, man. There was like, I think there was like 1,100 people there or something. And like it was AEW, so there was like Cody Rhodes on the card and MJF was on the card. And so these two no names from New Zealand walk out carrying these tag belts after this massive monumental video plays. And I've never felt smaller in my entire life, man. I just wanted to get my entrance over and done with so I could just slink in a corner in the ring and just hide. It was horrible.
Oh, no. So we heard from you guys at the Southern Rumble. A nice little video there. That was very cool to see you. Have you been keeping up much with what's happening in SPW since you've been away?
I'd like to say no, because that would make me sound way cooler than I actually am, Tyler. But me, Chantal, and Kane, whenever there is an SPW show put out, we get some beers, we get together, and we watch it, and we just reminisce, and it's great. It's honestly like the highlight of my week sometimes, especially during lockdown. And so we've watched every match from every show since we've left, and it's been great, man. I love Sky. Bro, he is my favorite wrestler in the world, I reckon. Sky and Niwa. And like Dream team. I want to see them have a feud, but they're both faces, and it just goes on for years. That would be sick. And then, but I've also I keep up with it as much as I can, man, honestly. Because, like, we're not gone forever. Like, we are coming back. So, of course, when I come back, I want to be like, I want this guy, I want to wrestle here, I want to, do this. So, like, I try and watch as much of everything I can. I watch I watch SPW, of course. I watch that constantly. I watch other companies. I try to keep up with IPW as much as possible, just to keep an eye out, just to keep an eye on things. And that way it'll make me sound way cooler when I come back home and I'll be like, yeah, I've seen your stuff, mate. You're all right, like I know what I'm talking about. And MCW as well. I keep up to date with them because they were my home away from home for a year or so there. And I got a lot of love for Melbourne, so I miss home so much. I miss SPW so much. I miss MCW so much. So it's kind of hard not to try and keep up with everything, man.
Well, Josh, for anyone who wants to keep up to date with whatever you're getting up to in the UK whenever you're able to do it again, where can everyone find you on social media?
Bro, I am social media'd up to the teeth. I have a Instagram at JK Moody SPW, Twitter at JK Moody SPW, Facebook JK Moody, and we are also going to start. We are toying with the idea, right? This is the breaking news. This is the scoop. Me and Kane realize we don't have a lot of time left here, and we want to get to know everyone as much as possible. So we are going to start having some chats with some of the friends we've made over here, over some beers, and sort of getting them out to the great wider world. So that's something we're working on now. So when that gets a name and a place, we'll let you know.
Awesome, man. We will be sure to keep our eyes out for all of that. And hopefully we'll be able to have a chat to Kane and Chantel soon as well here on The Bleeding Edge. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a genuine pleasure, lads. It's nice to hear some New Zealand accents again, honestly. And I can't wait to be back over, seeing you guys chatting shit and just punching Niwa in the mouth.
There he is, JK Moody. It was so good to talk to him again. So looking forward to having him back in the country, back in SPW sooner or later, whenever that may be. But for the meantime, it was great to chat to him on the podcast, reminiscing about all those great matches and moments, which of course you can watch on SPW On Demand. And speaking of which, I've got a Bleeding Edge exclusive tease here for you, David.
Lay it on me, Tyler.
Coming soon to SPW On Demand, we have some content from IPW in Auckland, Impact Pro Wrestling New Zealand. Going to be dropping some content real soon on SPW On Demand.
Ooh, very exciting stuff.
That's all I can say at the moment, but keep an eye on the social medias and we will be announcing that very soon.
And were you saying earlier, Tyler, that you can get SPW On Demand as an app for your phone?
You probably did hear me say that, David. Available on iTunes and Google Play for mobile devices, SPW On Demand, which will keep you entertained until SPW returns to live events in 2021. And we've just had the announcement on social media that Fight for Gold is going to be happening over 2 nights next year. February 5th and 6th, Waitangi weekend, so it's a long weekend, so it's a great opportunity. If you're not in the area, come on down and experience what SPW is like firsthand. If you can't make it to the Friday show, you might be able to make it to the Saturday show. You've got options, so it's great.
It certainly is. We had so much fun with the Southern Rumble weekend that we've decided to go back to doing back-to-back events.
Keep an eye on the SPW social media pages at SP Wrestling NZ on Twitter, SPW NZ on Facebook, and spwrestling.co.nz for ticket information. But for now, that is it for The Bleeding Edge. I have been Tyler King.
I've been David Dunn.
And we'll catch you next time here on The Bleeding Edge.